All right. Welcome back to the channel for the second video. I'm
Hello.
excited. It's been a week now and you know, I've had myself a week. I'm sure you have too. And it's been good though. Um, how about you? You had a good week overall?
Yeah, good week and yeah, can't been looking into this topic and excited to get into this and see where we branch off uh after getting into this discussion. So it's always really cool to see how far down the rabbit hole we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most fun part, going
For
down the
sure.
rabbit hole.
For
Yeah, and the
sure.
topic that Josh is referring to is something that I thought about over the week, and it's actually a quote from the Buddha, and it is "Be an island unto yourself." I'll actually read the passage itself just to get a little more context around what he was saying and why he was saying that, and when he was saying it. But then we can go into kind of our thoughts on that and branch off from there. And like you said, it could take any direction. So I'm ready for the ride.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
So again, this was something that I thought of in passing over the week, and it was just something that I thought, man, that would be awesome to talk about. And again, it's this quote, and to provide a little context before I actually start reading the passage, this actually comes from when the Buddha was about to die. And so in his final, uh, not his very final moments, but kind of getting towards the end of his life, he said this thing. And he said it because one of his disciples, whose name is Ananda, was asking him basically who's going to take over the Sangha or the community of monks and things like that when the Buddha passes away. Like, who's going to be the next leader to step up? And that's when he said, "Be an island unto yourselves," right? And it's like, um, he's basically saying, "I've given my teaching, and it's time for you to take that and do with it what you will. And you're really the one to save yourself."
Mhm.
So me going away shouldn't be a problem. It's you know, it could be a good thing actually.
Mhm.
So anyway, let me go ahead and read it. And this comes from the Maha Parinibbana Sutta. That's a Pali word. I believe it's the great, because I know Maha in Sanskrit it means great, basically,
Right.
or grand or mighty in English.
Mhm.
Parinibbana is parinirvana, parinirvana. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
parinirvana. Um, which I won't get into that, but it's basically reaching that final nirvana state that the Buddha supposedly attained. And then the sutta is a Pali term for sutra, is probably what most people have heard, and that is just like a scripture, right, or a passage. So this is the from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and it says. So this is the Buddha talking, right? And he
Mhm.
says, "I am now old, elderly, and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. I'm currently 80 years old. Just as a decrepit old cart is kept going by a rope, in the same way the realized one's body is kept going as if by a rope. Sometimes the realized one, not focusing on any signs and with the cessation of certain feelings, enters and remains in the signless immersion of the heart. Only then does the realized one's body become more comfortable. So, Ananda, live as your own island, your own refuge, with no other refuge. Let the teaching be your island and your refuge with no other refuge." And he goes on to say some other things about meditating on uh, the mind and the objects that come into the mind, and not holding on to covetousness or displeasure for the things of the world and stuff like that. But um, that is the passage. And I've heard several different translations of like him speaking in plural, of like be an island unto yourselves, as if he's talking about the entire community or the entire sangha.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's this one, and this one actually comes from Sutta Central, which is a website, and you can download the app where they have a lot of the Pali Canon that various like Theravadan Buddhist monks have translated into English, and you can read these things. And I think it's probably the closest to the actual words, right? It's probably the best translation, is what I'm trying to say. So in this particular instance, he's speaking singular, almost as if it's directed directly to this disciple of his named Ananda. And he's saying, live as your own island, your own refuge, with no other refuge. Um, so before I say anything more, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so getting into any of this, into this, the sayings of Buddha or Krishna or even Jesus. Um, I think you know these individuals, they're obviously at a very enlightened state, very very conscious, um, and what they're speaking, um, it when they're talking, there there's, I guess, different ways to say the same thing, um, and you know what I feel he's saying there is something that he's probably said, uh, uh, trying to get this meaning out in other types of ways, and maybe at this point in time of his life, it was it was just another way of him trying to tell others, uh, of this is, and I'm getting into my interpretation of it, is saying,
Yeah,
you know that again, I'm not the one. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Like, everything resides in you. Everything. It's not me. It's you. So everything that I do, everything that um, I practice, I I I preach, anything I say, um, I'm just a guide. I'm not somebody to follow. Well, a guide. I would say somebody like, yes, he is a guide, but more of, hey, maybe you want to come down over here and check this out over here. But I'm not somebody to necessarily worship. Uh, I'm here. I'm a messenger. There we go. Better. Not a guy. I'm a messenger, and I know some things, and I think these things could help you out. And when I'm gone, realize that nothing's changed. Again, it's all inside of you. You're God. Everything in this world, it could become, again, and then from the last talk, the world could become very heavy. But you can retreat. You can go back to solace at any second. Any second. You eliminate the mind. Well, again, that's how I've learned to do it. I eliminate that and I find my island every time, and it's my solace, it's my salvation, it's the closest to euphoric, or some call it a heavenly feel, whatever the case may be. I can get there at any time I want, and it's when and that's how I feel. He's telling them, hey, I think you're kind of leaning on me too much, and you don't have to, because everything that I am is what you are, and we're all one, and
yeah,
you need to understand that before I pass on, and just reinstilling uh that you're just as, powerful in the mind, in the being, in the spirit, is just as me. So when I'm gone, there's no need to worry because I am you and you are me. So that's kind of
Dude,
how I get it.
that's beautiful, man. Yeah, I don't know if I could say it more eloquently than that. I totally agree, right? Is that it comes down to you, and it comes down to you being the one to uh, end your own suffering, right? And so let me let me try to break it down this way, just as I'm thinking through everything. What is an island, and what is an island in the context of that quote? Um, and I feel, and he says this too in the same sentence. It's a refuge, right? It's to me, the way that I see it in my mind, in the context that he's providing, is like you're out in the ocean, and ocean is like life, right? And there's chaos out there, right? I mean, there's sharks, there's whales, there's all sorts of stuff. There's obviously the waves and the weather and everything, right? I mean,
Mhm,
the ocean has the potential to be the most dangerous place on earth, right?
mhm. Oh, for sure.
And if you're out in the middle of the ocean, out in the middle of nowhere, and you have no idea where you're going, and you're going to feel fear. You're going to be like, wow, something really bad could happen. I could lose my life, or I could get really injured, or whatever. And let's say
Mhm,
you've lost your way and you have no idea where you're going, and then all of a sudden you see an island, right? Like this beautiful tropical island, and you're like, oh, beautiful. There's some land over there. I can sail over there real quick and at least find like a safe haven where I
mhm,
can maybe regather myself or find some food or whatever. So that safe haven is I think the important part of this is that it's within yourself, right? It's not an external thing that you find somewhere out there. It's within, right? And then you
mhm,
put it um, again very eloquently, where you said we're all one. I am you, you are me. So really, by trying to find something out there, eventually the logical conclusion, if we carry this train of thought that we're all one, is that it's going to end up leading you back to yourself,
mhm,
right? So really, there's no reason to make that journey outside anyway. If
mhm,
you know that the conclusion of this journey will start, it will, so the beginning of it and the ending of it will be with me, right?
mhm,
So that's where the happiness is found. That's where the end of suffering is found. That's where
mhm,
all of life's answers are found.
mhm.
um that's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, for sure. I I I like something that I've known you said before of, being out in the world. Um, because I had initially was on a path of thinking, and this might be of like, man, if to get into the next level, am I gonna have to like retreat up to a mountain and be with these monks and then totally just forget life's experiences in a certain way, and I'm just going to be up there and I'm not going to be tempted by the world, and it's going to make everything a lot more simple to really get deep and really see how far I can go out there. But uh like you had said one time of, well, maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it is you know um recognizing these things, but also enjoying life's journey and what life holds, going out seeing things and meeting new people and maybe tasting that new beer over there and this and that. It's we are here and you can participate. Uh, but as long as you're in control, and you're in control here, you've distinguished the difference between the mind and the being, and you can go in. It's like a game. You can go in there and play when you want, and come out when you want. Um, and um, and yeah, like how you said, like you can go out and explore, but everything it begins and ends with you. And and because I was even thinking about this quote, you know, even exploration into space. I mean, it's great, wonderful. I mean, yeah, I want to see what the the new image that the new telescope is getting. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, what would they take a picture of now?
Yeah.
Um, but I start to think, I'm like, man, as far and deep as it goes in the unknown and the abyss, like I feel again, if you become really strong, and silent, like you can find a singularity inside yourself, and who knows where you could travel, if you're on that oasis, you're on that island, uh, uh, unto yourself, and you're there in that oasis. It's almost like to me, it's like a place where you can go no matter what. It's like home, you know. Your parents' loving arms, like I remember one time, at times, life getting hard, folks weren't here. There was home was no more, and that was my solace. That's all I knew at that time. But the home is always, it's there. I know it's cliche to say, but that's that island on yourself. It's there. You can go home at any moment in time and feel that love and feel those arms around you. And I really do feel once you go back to there, people that have passed away. There's a connection, they're back there. I mean, you can be connected to anything and everything, and it's it with these enlightened individuals, as Buddha and saying all these things, it's just it's it's really like how they just had to have been just so enlightened, just a whole other state, of just to say these things that are just so powerful. It doesn't take a lot of language, when it's said in the right way.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's beyond words. And I know we've talked about that before.
Hmm.
These things are more of an experience than anything else. And yeah, to be able to say something short and sweet like that and to pack it with so much meaning is
Hmm.
really impressive. So I agree with you on that. I like what you said about you can still go out into the world and play the game and kind of be a part of that, but understand, the true nature of reality.
Hmm.
And as long as you understand that, you're able to make that distinction between the mind and the being that, you refer to it as, which I think is a great way of looking at it. If you're able to do that, then yeah, you can experience, everything that is out there, right? And I
Hmm.
think one of the cool things in the quote was, well, I didn't fully mention this part. Well, I didn't read this part, but I did kind of mention it at the end. Was that later on in that passage, he talks about not desiring things of the world and not being displeased by things of the world, right? So you're kind
Hmm.
of in this middle path, you're kind of in this neutral state. And I think that's where you have to be if you want to kind of play the game a little bit and not just, like you said, fully retreat into, the mountains or some monastery somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand that um, if you're going to play that game in the world, you have to do it in a way that is not trying to um, desire things or be disgusted by things, um, and not make those things um, who you are. And maybe I'm not saying it the best way, but for example, and I can see this being easy for me to do if I didn't have the knowledge that I have right now, is like making my job my identity, right? Going
Mhm.
out there and being like, hey, I'm this person, I have this job title, this is who I am and what I'm all about. And, this is my everything because this is what's bringing in the money for the family. And this is what's, making me feel some sort of completion, or I feel like I've achieved something, right? And those things are good things, don't get me wrong. But if you attach to those things and you make them, like I said, your identity,
Mhm.
and you say, "Hey, this is what I am," then what happens when you lose that? You're going to fall apart.
Right.
You're
Oh,
going to
absolutely.
completely break down. I mean, you talk about suffering, right? Because if you make something, some material object, the fabric of your identity, and
Mhm.
that's your self definition, then when that thing goes away, and it will, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it
Oh, yeah.
inevitably will at some point, then
Yeah.
your then your identity is lost at that point, and you have nowhere to go. You don't know who you are.
Mhm.
But if you understand your true identity, and you understand that it's all within yourself, and you understand that you are one with this cosmos that we live in, and all of the things that that entails, then you can have a job out in the world. You can, like you said, go enjoy that new beer. You can uh, go shopping, whatever you want to do that people do, but it doesn't define you.
Mhm.
It's not something that you latch onto and just you know desire with all of your being, right?
Mhm.
And it's the opposite way too. You don't want to be so disgusted with things that you know uh you're just in hell until it goes away, right?
Mhm.
You have to be in this state where it's kind of this perfect neutrality, if you will. So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but what I'm getting at is I love what you said, right, about how you can still be in the world and live like many of us do. You just have to understand what's really going on, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, getting into it, it's okay to experience things, but again, into what the quote was saying is just don't find refuge in it, right?
Mm,
So like, you know, go do these things, but don't latch on to, like you said, don't latch on to it because it's uh and that goes for relationships, that goes for, you know, any type of stimulant, any type of thing that's fun right now. If you find refuge in it, it makes you feel good. Eventually, everything that you find refuge in, I think externally and not inside of you, if it's external, the mind is the one finding refuge in it. The mind needs to be entertained. And whatever it's finding refuge in, that's the new playground. Just like a relationship, that's the new playground. And I want to play on that playground. And then after a while, the relationship gets a little stagnant. You know, both parties, it gets stagnant because both parties are kind of reluctant to move forward with each other. And why? It's because, the mind has begun to become bored with that playground. And you start looking around at other playgrounds, and you know this about yourself, but you really can't, you just don't understand why, right? But it's because the mind is totally in control, and it's finding refuge in all these things, and it's just leading you nowhere, like you said. It's inevitably it's going to leave and then you're going, oh, now what? And then you have that feeling of that void that's in you, you know,
Mm.
and it's the mind, and it just it's depressed until it finds something else to entertain it, to fill that void, to entertain it with whatever feeling. Maybe the mind's needing love at that moment in time. So now it's going to have that void till it finds something else to fill, another entity or whatever to give it love, right? Um, so yeah, very important, like you were saying, and like how I think Buddha was saying, is just, yeah, experience, but don't find refuge in try not to find refuge in anything externally. It's all within. And as long as you do that, you're on the right path, and you're totally in control. Totally in control. If everything that you find is within and not out, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I know, I can definitely speak for myself. I don't want to speak for you, but I can guess, obviously. We have looked for that external gratification for a long time until we really figured out what was going on. and,
Oh yeah.
and I,
Oh yeah.
so it's like, you've gone down that road and you realize, yeah, this isn't really the path, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even
Well,
you
Matt,
know,
real quick, can I stop you just real quick on that? Because I think
yeah,
it's important.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think at that point in time, that's where people feel the most lost, is because, it almost gets depressing. You're in your late teens, getting into your 20s, maybe your mid 20s. Now you're hitting a midlife crisis, and you're all alone, right? You just lost another relationship. You got an S job, maybe, you think, and you hate your boss or whatever, and all these things compiling, and you know and these people, well, they don't know that refuge, they're finding all that stuff outside, and it's all inside. And if they were to turn that around, it would just be a total game changer, right? I mean, like had Jesus said, I was blind, but now I can see. You know, it's like I see the real now. You know what I mean? It's all this other stuff is just bourgeois. It doesn't even matter anymore. Because now all the refuge, everything that I need is right here. And I know, man, I've heard that said so many times, but it's the mind, somebody else's mind talking to my mind, and it's a different meaning. But
Yeah.
on the on a more conscious uh, state of saying that, it has a whole different type of meaning. I mean,
Oh
very
yeah.
life-changing meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go back and read, speaking of reading passages, if you go back and read a lot of those Bible verses that, we grew up with and stuff, but you read it from a more of an awakened mind, it
Hmm.
really opens up in a different way, a
Oh,
totally different way, where you're like,
absolutely.
wow, okay, wait a minute. I see what he's saying here. And
Yeah.
whereas before it was kind of like a nice saying, but it didn't really have like super deep meaning. And then now it's like, whoa, I didn't catch that the first time around, but now I really get what he's saying.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because there's vagueness in it, right? In the
Yeah.
beginning, yeah, because I could read everything, it'd just be vague, and you go to one place to another place to another place to talk to somebody, to some whatever, and everybody's got a different interpretation of it. That's why, I think the same thing on, you could take any, let's just say Buddha, this one, to be in an island unto yourself, somebody that's, you know, again, I'm not trying to say I'm better or more conscious than the other, but I would just say more of an unconscious mind, somebody that's, you know, just kind of in the world and just like everybody else. And we're to read some of these texts that we're talking about now, and interpreting it from the mind, and not grasping it from the being, and then using the mind to interpret it, using it as a tool and not who you are. They're going to have these interpretations of how they interpret, other spiritual things, right? So, and you'll have a ton of different interpretations. And then you come to somebody that's more conscious, or you could go. I really do feel anybody that's at a higher conscious state, more enlightened, and reads this, you know, if they're at a certain point, their interpretation is going to be the same as the other person that's at the same state.
Right.
You're going to hit a point to where you're so conscious and you're so you're getting more and more enlightened to where you read this and yeah, it just man, that's I know exactly what that means. And then the other person that's at the same state as you, just I know exactly what that means, and you have to say the same thing. There's no different interpretations. It's just it is the. No, I'm gonna sound like it's the truth. It's the facts. You can't deny it. I mean,
Right.
it is. I mean, it's just something. It's very, very factual. And once you make that transition into this more enlightened state, conscious state, like these things, they just again, I don't know how many times I use that. It's just like, man, see, there he goes again. I was blind, but now I can see. Like I see, like I can use that so many times in my day. But yeah, just reading these things is yeah, like, oh, okay, man, because I'll be on YouTube sometimes and listening to just Jesus's sayings or Buddha's sayings, Krishna's sayings, just all these things, and and I'm just like, oh, yeah, yeah, I get it. I mean, there are some that are pretty deep, and I'm like, man, I gotta really ponder on that one, but
Yeah.
I'll get there one day. But
Yeah.
no, yeah,
Totally.
sorry, I kind of got long-winded on that one, but
No, no, you're good. You're good. Um, no, I'm right there with you, man. Exactly. And it's interesting with these different traditions and religions and things like that. For me, it feels like a fine line to walk. I think there's a lot of good that we can take out of it. I mean, obviously, the theme of our whole talk tonight is this passage from one of these sutras, right? These Buddhist scriptures, but I and this is just me. I know we're all different, and everybody learns in different ways and gets more out of certain things versus other things. And for me, I've gone down the traditional religious path in various ways, Western religions, Eastern religions, and I find that and again, like you said, I love what you said earlier. It's not that I'm saying that I know everything and that nobody has anything more to teach me or whatever, but going back to being an island unto yourself, right, is like I find that within some more of these traditional religious paths, it is so external, right? Like I feel like I'm looking to somebody else, whether it might be like a priest or like a monk or
mhm.
some spiritual master, right? Not to say that it's wrong to learn from somebody like that. I mean, they've got a lot of wisdom, I'm sure. But I always find like with the whole submission to kind of this hierarchical system, you're still relying on that other person to get you to where you need to be, right? Rather
Mhm.
than relying on yourself. Again, this doesn't mean you can't learn from other people or hear the teachings of, you know, somebody who's like a religious professional, for lack of a better term. But I have seen some, and I've even been in these relationships myself where the student or the disciple is like completely submitted to the master or the priest or whatever in a way that is unhealthy, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I feel like I've even been in situations like that, and it really led me down the wrong path.
Hmm.
I lost all sense of like hope that I had before because
Hmm.
I ended up kind of in this dead end where it was like I realized it wasn't going to get me anywhere, and I realized I had wasted so much time trying to go down this path that wasn't going to take me anywhere. When again, back to what we're talking about, I realized at the end of the day, it's going to be within me.
Hmm.
So I'm walking in the wrong direction. You know, I need to
Yeah.
just sit right here.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing of just like, and I get it. Why the monk or who, and there's people, they'll go up and they'll retreat to the mountains to bed, whatever, I guess, and they stay up there. And I get it because the world, if you're in it, it'll weigh on you. It's a playground for the mind. That's that's all the world is, not reality, but the world that we live in, and it's um so I get it. Um, but you know, I think this is where a lot of people get in trouble. This is where I got in trouble. Like you just said, all these external things, because from the last talk, that's the one thing that luckily it snapped for me, or I realized something, and that's when I knew if I was going to get better, like all the praying, all the whatever, it it wasn't there, and I knew it wasn't, it it kind of highlighted itself to me, at least that's how I see it, and I was just like, okay, I gotta there's got to be another way. I mean, well, I don't even know. I don't even know at that point. I didn't even know there's another way. I'm like, man, I think I'm on my own. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I think I said I'm on my own. Like there ain't nobody. There's nothing out there that's gonna help me. And this wasn't like I'm thinking that there's an island I'm on myself. I'm just saying, man, I'm it. And if I can't figure it out, then I'm doomed. And
Yeah.
and
That was one of
so
those
yeah.
moments where you're kind of like you said, you didn't know what you know now. So it was
Mhm.
almost like you feel deserted or something like that, you know, where you're like,
Oh,
oh, if it's just me, I'm on my own, I got nothing
yeah.
left, and you don't know what to do at that point, you know?
No, totally lost. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people get to, and that's why we see as the world starts to get more into this digital phase, and I know I'm not totally bashing on it, but again, that's why I think you really need to start to like to start to try to comprehend some of these things of distinguishing reality from the real world, the being from the mind, because if you start diving in there, like you're going to hit a point to where you're going to be even more lost. You know, if you're in this world now and this ain't the real world, you know, I know that's going to be confusing. There's reality and then there's this world that we participate in, and then you start getting into this digital world. You're like
Mm,
three worlds away. So when you get lost finally and you have a breakdown, like you're really, I don't even want to know what that feels like. I
yeah.
broke in the first world or the first fantasy world. If I broke in the second fantasy world and then retreated, like, oh, okay, I'm back to reality, but really I'm in the first fantasy world.
I mean, it's just a long way to get back home, you know, and
Yeah, there's more layers.
oh, for sure, for sure. And I think, as we get more and more into this world, this other world, we're gonna start to see, and I don't go and I don't like, look at these numbers when I see them come through, and it's not like I research this, but I do hear it a lot that, suicide and that stuff it's just on a upward trajectory. It gets, the arrow gets more and more steep, every year. And I think that's what's going on is people are just feeling really, really lost at a certain point because they don't know where else to turn to. And they go back and they revert to what they grew up on, whatever faith they grew up on, or whatever the teachings or whatever, and it's not helping. And then
Yeah.
now what? Now you do, like you just said, you feel deserted, like, oh shit, like everything's been a lot, like I don't know what to do. And then, and 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 that's where the mind could really just get very dark,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and that's where nobody wants to be, and it's very hard to pull yourself out of that state. Um, but again, that's why we're having these talks to to we've been there. You and I've been there, and luckily, you know, uh, by some miracle, or it's just the way it was supposed to be, or the connection, and it was just in the cards. But we found our way out, and now we know these things. It's we were behind the lines, and now we've got knowledge of, like, okay, of our pathway of getting to this point. And but yeah, I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble. Um, and it's nothing that they did, it's nothing that
Yeah.
they did. They didn't do anything wrong, you know, and um, and it's just, you know, you listen to these talks or some other talks, but really, man, you know, distinguishing yourself from, knowing that you're not your mind, um,
That's huge.
it's very, very huge, and uh, to start getting better for sure.
Yeah, and
Eh,
being able to quiet the mind, right?
for
From
sure.
and an important thing about that, about quieting the mind, I think is and they talk about this, right, in any type of meditation class you're going to have, is that you don't try to force yourself to have no thoughts at all, right?
Hmm.
You might get to that stage at some point, which is great, but it's more of just observing, right? What's flashing in front of you. Yeah, I've heard it said before, kind of like watching, like the thought that's coming in your mind is kind of like a cloud in the sky,
Hmm.
and you're just watching the cloud go by, and then
Yeah.
watch it go the other way. So you're just observing the thought. You're not holding
Hmm.
on to it.
Right.
So quieting the mind is not necessarily meaning you have nothing in your mind. It's more of you're not identifying with the things that come into your mind and making them a part of yourself, or as we would say, a part of the being,
Hmm.
right? So um, that's really important, is to not whatever thought you have, not identify that as you, right? Because you are not the mind.
Hmm.
You are not that thought. Now, getting into what you just said, this was really interesting about the digital age, right? The technology era that we live in.
Hmm.
There is another layer, which is actually, I didn't really think about that a whole lot until you said that, and now I'm like, yeah, that's a great point. There is another layer, and even with stuff like social media,
Hmm.
people will build this profile of themselves and only show the best part of themselves to everyone around them, and
Hmm.
they end up building this digital identity of themselves. And I think, and I've even gotten to this point before in the past, where it's like you identify with that digital self that is perfect, right? Because you're only showing the best things on social media, right? Like I went on this vacation, or I got this promotion, or I got married to the love of my life. And
Mhm.
that happens to so many people where they'll look at somebody else's profile on some social media website and be like, man, look how good they have it. Why don't I have that? Right.
Right.
And really all that is fake. Like you're not seeing the day-to-day struggles that that person is going through because they're not sharing that, right? But it's possible even for you as that person who has that profile to identify with that other self that you have created in this digital playground, right?
Mhm.
And shown the world. And that has the potential to get you completely lost, right? Where you veer
Mhm.
totally off. Because now not only are you the mind, but you're also this fabrication of the mind that you've created in this digital world. And it just starts to, you talk about the rabbit hole, like it can go deeper and deeper from there, I feel like, you know.
Oh, for sure. And then you're working on, and then of course the ego is just, that's where it wants to be right there,
Yeah.
oh, they got this, oh, they posted this, or they didn't like me on that, your ego is just going crazy, right? It's just on, all hopped up on all the, man. If I would say that stuff is like steroids to the ego, man. It's just it's like, yeah, give me some more,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you're just totally out of control. Like the being is just so suppressed that it's just, eh, your true self's just sitting back there going, man, I'm never gonna see the light of day. But you know,
And
like,
you
man,
know, another thing about that, not to cut you off, but I just thought about it,
Mhm.
is when people, comment on things online, or you're going on forums and stuff like that. And I've done this too. I think we all have, but um, you say stuff that you wouldn't say in real life. You're right, because
Yeah.
you're kind of hiding behind the keyboard. So again, to your point with the ego, is like, oh yeah, I know that they have no idea who I am, and I can just post this, or maybe just because it's in a digital realm, I feel like I'm protected more. And man, people say some horrible stuff online, like
Oh yeah.
just crazy. And then you end up thinking that that's how other people really act, all the time.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed in my own life is that people that I've met online that I thought were crazy will go have a conversation in real life, and we're totally cordial with each other, you know? And then
Oh
you're
man,
like,
yeah.
yeah, because in real life, nobody actually acts like that, And,
Yeah.
so it's just like watching the news. Like I feel like a lot of people go online and they're looking at internet stuff and internet conversations, and they think that's the real world, when really, again, like you said, it's this digital world, which is even another layer deeper, farther away from reality.
Yeah.
So now you're just like, you're in a whole other realm, and now finding your way back is even harder.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, and you'd fall back into, you would retreat back to, I know this is really getting sci-fi here, but you retreat back into like the first world, the world that you feel is the real world. But really that's not the real world either. And then, you're not going to find solace there. Again, and then, going back to the saying, it's the mind, it's the ego, it's everything finding refuge in something else. You're
Yes.
constantly just trying to branch out, trying to find something and entertain the mind even more. That's another thing on this social media. uh, And again, I'm not totally bashing it. Just saying you got to be careful. Again,
Right.
experience it, but don't find refuge in it. You know, it's like, man, the mind now with all this information at its fingertips, you know, I mean, dude, if you could have told me 25 years ago that like back then I couldn't get enough of The Simpsons, right? And like I remember it
That's
would
awesome.
come on it would come on like at 6 and 6:30 where I was at, and I was like, oh man, you know, there I couldn't wait for it to come on, and then when it went off, it went off. Maybe you can tell me 25 years ago that I'd have an apparatus or this tablet and I could watch as many Simpsons episodes. I could just I could binge watch 30 seasons, I'd be like, what? Like, no way, I would never come out of my house. But now
Right.
but now that, even if I was that enthused about Simpsons, okay, I'll watch that. Like, what else can I watch? Oh, that's boring. But 10 years ago before I had all this, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And they got TikTok. I mean, it's just that now the brain, like it's being trained now to like, it has to find a new playground every second, every 5 seconds. That's why TikTok's so addicting, because it's just like new playground, new playground, new playground, new playground. I mean,
Totally.
the mind's just like, yeah, stick another needle in me. Stick it, yeah, it's just,
Just
needle,
feeding
fluh,
it.
needle, fluh, needle, fluh, and it's just like, it's just dopes out of its mind, man. You just,
Right.
yeah, dude, every day, and it's just like, sooner or later you're gonna have two phones doing TikTok at the same time because the brain needs two of them at the same time, and then,
I just
I
pictured
mean,
like a room like 360
yeah,
degree
just
full of
full of them.
monitors where
Yeah.
you're like spinning around and you're like, I need another video.
I need another video. I need another monitor in here, man. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, man, yeah, and yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And then when it manifests and that volcano goes off, then and then you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll go back to revert to what, is supposed to save me, and it don't. Then all of a sudden now you're in some deep S.
Oh
And
yeah.
and then I think that's where people start to really get in really bad trouble. With the dark, they're getting dark. And it's not their fault, it's just, that's the world that unfortunately, a lot of us participate in and don't know about the reality. And they get, you know, even talking to you know, a shrink or whomever, again, I'm not saying that they're bad, but you got to be careful with them too, because again, now you're finding refuge in them. They
Right.
could lead you into something bad as well, not knowing. I often, there was a thing, I'm sure it's been said before, but if I was going to seek somebody to help me with my problems, I would seek the one that has no problems, that has
Hmm.
conquered all problems. That's the one I want to go talk to. I don't want to talk to somebody that has just as many problems as me. They
Right.
just they're just they just know how to they just know how to you know uh I guess band-aid it, and then when another problem comes, they band-aid that. Um and uh and then also that's another thing that when I was going through my stuff, one thing I was real cautious of, and I'm glad I was just getting hooked on medication and stuff, them pumping me Xanax or whatever the case may be. And yes, it can help you, but man, you start to find refuge in that, right? Because now that's what makes me better, but it's really not making you better. It's really just
Yeah.
masking everything. And then now all of a sudden now I'm taking one pill. A couple years from now, I'm taking two pills, three, and it just, yeah, again, it spirals out of control. And
Start stacking up. Yeah.
that whole time you're trying to find remedies outside of you, and really the remedy was all the time it was here.
Mm.
You didn't know that island, that solace, that euphoric, everything that you ever needed it was right. Like you said a while back, all you had to do was just sit here. That's all you had to do. All
Yeah.
you had to do was just sit here and just be, and you'd have been fine. You know. Now that's really hard to an unconscious being in a very unconscious mind, but it's that simple. It is that simple. It's very hard to finding that and getting there, but once you get there, once you open that door, it's like riding a bike. You know how
Yeah.
to do it, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think and we talked about this a little bit last time. Getting there is a practice. It does take time. You mentioned it last time. There have been examples of people just being awakened instantly, right? But
Mhm.
that's a rare occasion. That's not going to be the norm. So you do have to work at it. And I think meditation helps. And I think just being able to observe things without, like we were just talking about earlier, without desiring them too much or being disgusted by things too much, right? Because
Mhm.
again, like we said, it could go the other way. And you mentioned this last time in the other video was, what if you're in a public area like the DMV and a kid is screaming, they just called number 17 and you're number 311, right? And like,
Dude, it's that
the,
Beetlejuice one. Remember the very
yeah,
end of Beetlejuice where he's got like the number is like in the trillions and it's like on number 8.
yeah, exactly. And
Sorry.
he takes the other guys.
And then he makes his head go small. Yeah.
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 Oh, I love that. They have a new one coming out. Did you know that?
I heard, dude. Oh, your boy's gonna be there watching that for
I am
sure.
too. I
Yeah,
am
yeah,
too. That's gonna be awesome.
yeah.
No, but yeah, it's not being too disgusted with things either, right? You have to be able to be patient in those places, and um, that's the real test, right? Is can you still be peaceful in a place like that? And I
Yeah.
think it does come down. It really does come down to detaching from your mind and just being able to observe the mind as almost a third party.
Hmm.
You are the witness of the mind. You are not the mind, you are the witness of the mind. You
Hmm.
are pure consciousness, pure
Right.
unadulterated consciousness. And whatever happens to this body, to this mind, in this world, ultimately does not affect you
Hmm.
because you aren't the body, you aren't the mind, you are so much more than that, right? And I won't try to define what we are because really it's beyond words. But um, going back to what you were saying, if you can sit with that and realize that and just be with that, you don't have to read another book or watch another one of our videos ever again.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. It
you're
is.
there, and
You're
it's
there.
weird
Yeah.
because I feel like I've gotten to that place.
Hmm.
But the reason why I love having these talks and the reason why I still read books and even watch videos and stuff is you do have to remind yourself, right? Because it is so easy to fall back into the game.
Hmm.
And so you do kind of have to constantly remind yourself of what the truth is. And
Hmm.
it's like cultivating a garden, right? You have to till the ground, you have to water the plants, you have to do things in order to make things grow and make things spring up. So it does take work, but it is simple. It doesn't it's not a complex thing. It doesn't have to be hard in terms of complexity. It's hard in terms of defeating the mind, which you've fed into your entire life.
Mhm.
but
Oh yeah.
but as far as the methodology to get there, that in itself is fairly simple. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You have to even, yeah, getting there. You do have to, you do have to continue to practice. Um, uh, I often, I'll do the same thing, just like you said, reading things, researching things. It's just, good to just different perspectives. And I always, even though knowing that I feel like, I, I've, I've found the right path, I'm still always, trying to learn more, right? There's get different perspectives and just be more well-rounded, and but yeah, practice is yeah, you have to do that. Um, Even though you know how to ride the bike, you have to take the bike out every once in a while, because I getting into science and stuff like that now. Again, I'm not no scientist or anything like that, but I feel in just anything in this universe that everything wants to survive. There's nothing that just like, oh, it just rolls over and just like, oh, okay, I'm cool to die. Like everything wants to live, and that's including the mind. The mind wants to live. It does not want to be put away and not dealt with and just die off. It won't.
Yeah.
It wants to be, and therefore you have to continue to practice to keep it in check. Because you start to fall back and you don't practice, the mind starts to creep back up and start doing its thing, and then before you know it, it's maybe not in full control, but it's getting there, and if you don't watch out, it could start to overtake you. Now, however, I would say this: now that you know how to ride the bike, you should at that point in time like start to realize, oh man, I need to get back on my game here, and start to get this thing back in check. Because usually,
Right.
by that time, your emotions are starting to sway. You're starting to revert back maybe even to the old ways of, man, you know, I'm starting to feel a little depressed, or I'm starting to, anxiety's starting to creep back up on me. Like, what the hell's going on? It's like, oh man, I've kind of started reverting back to my old ways, and without me knowing it, I'm just kind of letting my mind kind of do what it wants again. And
Exactly.
it's a kind of a cat and mouse game, but you stay on it and you practice it. Again, that's why I think a lot of people, and I don't even think, I believe I know that's why people retreat to the mountains and stuff like that. And I say mountains because I don't know. I just assume they're just way on those tall mountains up there, far away from civilization, because it makes it a lot easier when you're away from all of it. And
Oh yeah.
you wake up, you meditate, you chant, you eat, and you go to sleep, and you do the same thing over again. There's the mind. It's very hard for the mind to 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 survive up there, but yeah, but while
I
we're down
agree.
here, yeah, while we're down here doing our thing, you definitely got to be on your game, uh, at times, to keeping that in check.
Totally. Yeah. And it's important, I think, to have those moments of retreat. I haven't personally done a lot of that. I know you haven't done a lot of that either, but I think it can be helpful. Um, Especially again, just if you need time to decompress and kind of get some of these toys out of your face for a while and just focus back on your true self and reality. I think it's good to have those places where you can go and retreat to. And I'd even like to try it at some point for myself, just
Mm.
to see what the effect would be. Um, I mean, I've gone to monasteries and stuff, and I know you've been to one with me, but I think it would be cool to actually go somewhere like you said, like in the mountains or something like that, and
Oh yeah.
just experience that to kind of get the reset, if you will. You know, I think it's important to get those resets every now and again.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, you know, vacations can do that for you as well if you're able to take off somewhere and, you know, be alone at the beach. I've done that before. Go meditate on the beach by myself and just hear the waves, and that really just was powerful.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so you know, I just say that to say we're not saying don't do that, right? I think it's good to do those things, but the real test, I think, is being here in the thick of it, in the middle of it all, and still being able to understand reality and to
Hmm.
make the distinction between the mind and the being. And but again, you have to have that practice. You have to have those moments of retreat. You have to have. I mean, honestly, I think a daily practice is helpful, even if it's only 5 minutes a day
Hmm.
of just taking time to be alone, not have any toys in front of you, you know, not have playgrounds that you're bouncing around
Yeah.
in, and you know, just go within yourself, right? Because we keep talking about you being an island and a refuge unto yourself, but it's hard to do that when you're not taking time each day to go to that island, right?
Hmm.
And to visit that island and to experience that island. And so again, even if it's only 5 minutes a day, try to do that. Try to start with that. Try to just focus on your breathing, you know, and maybe we can talk about the more technical side of that later on at some point. But what all I'm trying to get at is I don't want anyone to think that this just happens and you know you're good and it's all easy from here on out.
Hmm.
Because I think that would be a question is like how did we get to this point? Um, and for me, you know, I'm not perfect. It's not like I've been able to, without a doubt, every day keep up with things, but I do try. I try every day to take time for myself, meditate, you know, read some spiritual literature, whatever the case may be. And you know, I try to do it at the start of the day to so that's kind of like the foundation for the day.
Hmm.
But again, I know I'm rambling on, but without that practice, it's hard to really maintain that state. I feel.
For sure. And yeah, just one more real quick thing, going off of what you said. You know, the feeling that you felt at the beach. You know, the feeling that somebody might feel at the bar, and you're kicking it and you're having your drinks and you're feeling good. You know, or maybe after that, you know, maybe you're taking a couple of tokes, right? Maybe uh the feeling of meeting somebody new in a relationship and how they make you feel, you know, all these things that make you feel good, you know, whether it be a stimulant or you're going on vacation, you know, all these things. This proves, I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing when you do this? You don't know, but in reality, you're going to that beach, you're sitting there, and you're quieting the mind. You don't understand, you know, don't realize what's going on, but you're quieting the mind. Why are you drinking that beer? Why are you, you know, maybe taking a hit? You know, all this stuff. It's nobody's fault. It's you're doing these things, but what are you doing? You're quieting the mind. It helps you. What do you say? Oh man, I just it just relaxes me. It just, you know, I just become more calm. Well, what's doing it? Yeah, it's a stimulant and it's calming the mind. And now your mind's not rambling as fast as it was. And what does that do when you have that stimulant and when you go to that beach? When it calms down, it puts you at ease. It almost gets you into a euphoric state. Now, what if I could tell you that finding that island inside of you, you could go and have and be in that state of those feelings any moment at any time when the world gets heavy. You can feel that. You can live in that euphoric state. You can feel that. You can when you've had a couple beers and you're hanging out with your bros or you're at the beach, like you can be there. That feeling, that just that that state, you can be there without all that. That if you find refuge in yourself and you practice it and you find that island, you can live there and you can be there as long as you want, anytime you want. And you know, you don't have to go outside to feel that. You can actually find it here. And it's very real because I've felt it, and it's, you know, not all the time can I get to that state, but man, when I hit it, oh my goodness. And that's what just keeps me going down that path because I want to see. Now my challenge is how long can I stay there before I get back out of it? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's my challenge now. You know, I'm chasing that now, you know. And when I say I'm chasing it, I'm like chasing it within, you know. I'm not looking out. I'm looking in now. So that would be my message. After all this, you know, that island can bring that to you, and it's not something you have to go seek somewhere else. It's all inside, and you can feel those feelings without going somewhere or doing something. All you have to do is just sit in a chair and be. And when you get good at it, you can be in those states and even better. So,
That's powerful
yeah,
because you can take that anywhere, you know?
for sure. Yeah, anywhere. Anywhere. You don't have to pay anything, you don't have to do nothing uh, at any moment in time. Any moment in time. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, what more can we say after that?
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah,
the treasure, right? I mean,
it is.
you find it and you're golden.
Yeah, it's it. Yeah. And I'm sure, man, once you find that, like there, yeah, I mean, there's no way you're gonna turn back from that, you know? It would
Yeah,
prove itself after that, you know. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's good stuff, man. I love that so much. I mean, it's amazing. I think, I don't know if I have any more to say after that. Good stuff. I thought it was a great conversation and good discussion. So hopefully, you know, whoever is out there watching this, hopefully you had as much fun watching it as we had participating in it. But you have anything else in closing for us, Josh?
No, no, I'm good. Just hey guys, finish out, guys and girls, just finish out the week strong, and again we'll be on. We're doing this again next Thursday. I know it'll probably take maybe a day or two for us to post the other video, but yeah, every Thursday at 10, Matt and I do another video, and then we get that posted, you know, the next day or so. So we'll be back on again next week, and till then, you know, uh, find your solace and try to distinguish the mind from the being.
Absolutely. Yeah. And on that note, any comments that anyone wants to leave or anything like that, we're here for it. We definitely want this to be interactive, and we want people to ask questions, and we may not have all the answers. I know we don't have all the answers, but it stimulates conversation. It gets the ball rolling in different directions. So definitely feedback is good, and we'll be looking forward to that. But I think that's going to do it for this video. And man, it's been a great conversation, and hope you have a great evening and great rest of your week.
Hey, brother, you too. All right, we'll see you.
All right.